Doing is he's using John 20, verse 31, kind of as a guiding verse for how we look at the book of John. So I'm going to turn there real quick and read that just so we have that fresh in our minds. Again, John 20, 31, which said, "But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name." And so based off of that, we're looking at the book of John and asking some general questions about the passages. How does this show that Jesus is the Christ? How does this show that Jesus is the Son of God? And how does this show that by believing we will have life in his name? And then also, why would John choose to include this out of something else that happened or compare it to something else? And then also ask ourselves, how does this topic or idea relate to the other ideas that we have already encountered in this book? And feel free, if you have any questions or comments, raise your hand. I also might miss your hand, so just you can just say my name to get my attention if I don't notice your hand. But starting in John chapter 5, I don't know if we'll go over all of chapter 5 today, or just at least I want to get up to around verse 29. But we're going to start by reading John chapter 5, verses 1 through 9. If I could get somebody to read that. Dad?
Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath.
All right, so here we see during a feast, Jesus goes up to Jerusalem, and he comes upon an invalid by the pool of Bethesda, and the invalid's trying to get into the water. There's the tradition that is an angel would come and stir up the water, and when that happened, any people who were sick or had any injuries would try and get into the water and be healed. And so the man's been there for a long time, and then Jesus comes and heals him. But I think there's some really interesting things that we can look at in this passage. So I think the first thing we want to look at is what things seem different in this sign compared to what we have already seen. This is the third sign discussed in John. So what's different in this one compared to the others? Mom?
So in this one, Jesus approaches a man rather than someone coming to him and asking for his help.
Yeah, I think a really big difference. Normally people are calling out to Jesus, just in chapter 4, there was the official who tracked Jesus down to get him to heal his son. And in this one, the man just seems really indifferent. Obviously the guy's there to get healed, but he doesn't really seem to recognize Jesus. We'll see that later. And he doesn't really care. He just doesn't really seem to care much about getting healed. He also doesn't seem thankful. Maybe he said something and it wasn't recorded, but the guy just is healed. He takes up his bed and he walks out. And so with faith emphasized so heavily in the previous signs, or just throughout the book of John, why do you think what's the significance of this guy just not really caring or showing any faith? David?
It's interesting that it seems like the first one where the person that's receiving it is not said to be a believer. Maybe this shows
Yeah, we definitely see that in the next few verses, but it's showing that Jesus is here not to. Jesus is seeking us out and is wanting to actively save us. He's not just coming and if we raise our hand and if we go try and find him, he'll be there, which he will. But he wants to save us, and so he's reaching out to us. And then why was this included? How does this show that Jesus is the Christ or the Son of God? I know that's kind of a, yeah.
He had more truth, more power than what they thought was powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that if he was cool, the angels were water would heal them. And it's reported factually in this chapter that I think there's maybe a shade possibility that that's kind of rumor.
Yeah.
More than fact, but it's possible that it was factual. But Jesus is better than that. Not only does he heal someone, it's not a competition, it's not a race to get to Jesus and receive some limited blessing that excludes other people. You don't need to do a special, specific thing to be healed by Jesus in the water. You don't need the cooperation of other people for Jesus to help you.
Yeah.
It's all superior to what they thought was this powerful thing that could help them. So
Yep.
they were.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It shows the power of Jesus both in other things couldn't heal, he can, but then I also think it's kind of a little bit of I think at least a little bit of like an Old Testament, New Testament, the sign of a new law and of the coming Messiah is that, yeah, you're right, Jesus's healing ability or powers are so much greater. I mean, this guy's been there for decades, and he hasn't been healed, and then Jesus just walks in and heals him in just a moment. Yeah.
So I just wanted to be thinking about David's comment earlier about Jesus reaching out without being asked. I think we also see some of the nature of God, the element of mercy, that this man doesn't have anybody else to help him. So maybe he's if the story is true, what happens is true. He's laid there for how long and watched other people get in the water and get healed, and nobody is willing to come and help him. But Jesus, even has enough compassion on him to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And then I'm honest, I only had two things for this, but do you think there's any more symbolism in this story? I think we see a little bit more in the next few verses, but I had like the kind of the old way of healing, or like Jesus's healing of the man shows the superiority of Jesus, and then I kind of think you see a little bit of Israel, the state of Israel, or at least of like the Pharisees in the slave man. I think especially with how what the Israelites thought the Messiah was going to be was this person who would come and be a conqueror and take down the Romans, and then the Israelites would be on top. I think this man is just kind of like he's wanting this physical thing. He's wanting to be physically healed, but he's going to the wrong places. He expects the wrong thing to bring about that Messiah, or he expects it to look like something else. He expects the pool to heal him when Jesus comes and is different from what he was expecting. But if that's all for that section, we'll move on to the next. Somebody had, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say that when you mentioned earlier about like why a particular sign is chosen versus other ones, we have other records, we can see it in other ways. For me, when I read this, the reason John chooses this one is because of the discussion later in the chapter about him being in charge of the Sabbath, being over the Sabbath. Not just that he did a miracle on the Sabbath, but because that happened to other places too, but here he's told someone on one of the high Sabbaths, they're there for one of the important Sabbath days for the feast, and Jesus tells him to take up his bed and carry it. They would have thought wrong, especially on the third high Sabbath.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, then moving on to verses 10 through 18, if I could get somebody to read that, Cody.
So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered them, "The man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" But the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, because there was a crowd in the place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." This was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God.
So here we're seeing that, the Pharisees find out, they see the man carrying his bed, they inquire about it, and the man tells them that Jesus was the one who told him to do that and healed him. And so then they're looking to kill him because he's putting himself on a plane equal with God by what he says about working on the Sabbath. And so one thing that I've always thought is just either confusing or interesting is just I don't understand really like what the man like what the guy is thinking or what he does. He doesn't seem particularly grateful to Jesus at all, and he ends up pointing. I can't tell if he's pointing a finger at Jesus when the Pharisees ask him, like, "Oh, I'm not in trouble. It's that guy's fault. He told me to do it," or if he's happy he's healed, and so he's excitedly telling everybody about it. I just really don't know what the that guy's intentions are, but I think he also doesn't know the name of Jesus. Either he doesn't recognize him the first time he sees him because it says Jesus withdrew because of the crowd, or he just doesn't know who he is, period. So either he saw him later and he said it's that guy and the Pharisees recognized him, or for whatever reason he just didn't know he didn't recognize him the first time. But what do you think the significance of that is, of the man not knowing him or not recognizing him, and then telling the Pharisees about it later? If there is any. Greg?
Well, at least for the first part, I think most people don't know Jesus period.
Okay.
I think they would say they know him, but they really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's even that far. I mean, he just doesn't seem to know who he is at all.
Yeah. Nathan?
I think it's interesting that this guy recognizes that there's some authority
Mm-hmm.
that is beyond the law. Because they come to him and say, it's not lawful for you to do this on the Sabbath. And he's like, yeah, but this guy's doing it. Like, he listens to it. He realizes it was not lawful. But he recognizes that there is authority in Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, I think he definitely does recognize it. David, did you have something to say? Or?
So, I think that we're used to studying the Bible and being told we need to understand it ourselves and not just trust preachers and religious leaders blindly. We're used to that. We have our own copies and we can study them and have lots of resources, and they did in the first century. And the Pharisees and some of the scribes and the Sadducees are experts in the law. They are experts. And they come to him, it's not lawful for you to do this. And it's like a doctor, a kind of doctor coming and saying, you're breaking the law. A lawyer is breaking the law. And you're like, this guy told me, well, who's he, you know? So when he finds out who it is, not only does that help him be off the hook a little bit, you know, it's that guy, it's not my fault. But also, I think you go to the experts and you say, I don't get this, you know,
Yeah.
and you think they are going to legitimately help you understand, you know, how is this guy able to tell me what to do on the Sabbath when he healed it? They are
Yeah.
And he doesn't know that either. So I suspect that he is intimidated by this situation, absolutely does not understand, doesn't draw the right conclusion here. So he goes to who he thinks are the experts who are going to be able to explain.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I think there's also, I think we kind of see that idea of people seeing the miracles or experiencing the miracles, and then they don't get they don't understand what Jesus is wanting them to understand, or they see a miracle and then they just keep asking for more. They don't understand that it's a sign of Jesus' authority, and so I think that makes a lot of sense. And with that, I think going along after that, in verse 14, Jesus finds them afterwards and tells them, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." So do y'all think Jesus is saying, like, oh, if you sin again, I'm gonna undo it, like you're gonna be crippled again, or is he saying something else?
I
Cody?
don't think so.
Okay.
I think like, he's saying sin no more so that nothing worse may happen to you. Like, the punishment for sin is worse than any kind of like physical, problems that even, this guy knows what it's like to suffer and to not, to be like in a bad spot. But I think this is Jesus highlighting that, the spiritual consequences of sin are going to be worse than any physical, problems.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So Jesus comes in and I think kind of reinforces the point, or is saying that I think, this shows that this man had a physical need. He needed to be healed, but it also highlighted this man's and then also Israel's greater need for spiritual salvation. And not only show that Jesus has the power to save them, but also that he is the solution. And I think, yeah, like I said, it's a common thing that Jesus is trying to get them to realize. In chapter 4 with the official son, it happens at the end of chapter 5, and it happens multiple times throughout the book. And then moving on to Jesus answering the Jews' persecution of him working on the Sabbath, he says, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." What's the significance of this answer? Like, what is Jesus saying? And then why do you think he chooses to say it this way? Yeah.
The Jews understood that Jesus was making an implicit claim to deity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least that's the writer's editorial comment of verse 18. And if they had misunderstood what Jesus was doing, why didn't he correct them? I think he didn't correct them because they understood correctly.
Yeah.
He was making an implicit claim to deity.
Yeah. Yeah, it implies that God is working continuously, and this important work, that's at the same level of what Jesus is doing. And so he's calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. And so then wrapping this section up as a whole, I think it's interesting. This is the third sign in the book of John. The first one being turning the water to wine at Cana. The second one, the healing an official son. And then this is the third. After the first two, the text moves on pretty quickly, and Jesus doesn't really Jesus, I believe it records Jesus moving on, or at least it doesn't record any conversations that happen directly after. But this is not the case with this sign. It not only records the interactions of the man with the Pharisees, but then the Pharisees with Jesus, and then after what we'll get to in a little bit of like verses 19 through 29. So do you think there is any importance in the focus on this sign? I'm not necessarily saying that there is. thought that was something interesting that I noticed. Yeah.
I think it was Josh that said earlier that sometimes a sign is used to force a conversation that wouldn't have come up naturally. And doing it on the Sabbath forces the conversation to focus on who Jesus is, not the miracle, but that he did it, the miracle, yes, but that he did it on the Sabbath. And what gave him the opportunity to say, your criticism, the Sabbath criticism, to say, my Father's working on the Sabbath, right? God did work on the Sabbath, he worked all the time. And so I can too, because I'm his son. And people are, wait a minute, and then, maybe the most important words in this whole section, though, are that, verse 23, that all should honor the Son just as they honor the Father. Super important. And that's, Jesus is not the Son of God that Lazarus, which is why, they were threatening to stone him. But there are lots of religions that recognize Jesus as a great man, a good teacher, a prophet, or whatever. In fact, almost all religions, other religions, recognize him as that. But only followers of Jesus believe that he should be honored as the Father is honored. Judaism doesn't, Islam doesn't, and that's something very distinctive, and Jesus is making a very important distinctive position about who he is and what the Father has given him.
Yeah. Greg?
It's also a really interesting contrast, because if you go back to the math question, I said, why are you carrying your mat? And that's when he said, well, this other guy told me. You've got the Pharisees here who, from the standpoint of this guy, and most people at that time, would say, these are the people that know the law. They understand the law. They know what the law requires. They know what the law says. They know what the law means and how it affects our lives. And now here later on, you've got Jesus responding, and you don't have someone interpreting the law, understanding the law, applying the law. You've got the person who gave the law, which is a significant change in authority. So, here this guy starting off with what he thinks is the real authority, when in fact, he's been talking to the real authority before.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Anything else on this section? Yeah.
Do you think that he didn't get it right when Jesus says, see your will, sin no more, and he goes kind of tattle on Jesus?
That's what I was wondering about that a lot. I don't think that he does get it. I think that he misunderstands. I think all he gets is, oh, this guy's some teacher, and this is the guy who told me to pick up my mat. So I think he misunderstands. But Jake?
Yeah, I think he probably is not aware of the politics of the situation. You see the Pharisees and Jews pressure other people later on in John they don't put up synagogue because of Jesus, and so they're pressuring people. So he probably is like at the freedom point. So many points he doesn't really know what's going on. He's looking for information on it. And this guy, he clearly has some authority because he did a miracle. Clearly he has something like, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
Jesus finds him in the temple. So he's seeking truth on some level. Maybe he doesn't know quite what he's doing by pointing out Jesus, but his heart's in the right place. And John knows that he was paralyzed for 38 years. So he was an urban legend where he ended up becoming converted at some point. They knew his story.
Yeah.
So it's possible, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus doesn't follow the formula either. He does something illegal. Wildly unexpected. But then he also doesn't say, well, in the vein of Rabbi so-and-so from the something in the Talmud, we can interpret it this way. He doesn't do it right. He doesn't build his argument in a way that they recognize.
Yeah.
He just says, God told me I could.
Yeah.
Basically, you're like, I can I think, and we underestimate how horrifying these things would have been for them. And this guy basically, like, he's saying he's a rabbi, lots of people think he's a rabbi. Now he is crossing the line into rogue rabbi, who's doing dangerous things, and like, they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to understand, they need to grow, but like, I mean, I try to sometimes think about how we would react if someone like did these sorts of things differently in our midst, what we would do. Like, would we let him just like do things that we think are wrong in our group? Would we let him tell people, no, you don't have to do that, you can do something else in our group? And I mean, that would be horrifying to us. And they react, like they're reacting to a false teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to grow and believe and look at the signs and things like that. But it's not really shocking that they act. It's like Jesus is doing horrifying, shocking things from their
Yeah.
perspective.
That's a good point.
And Jesus doesn't seem to be surprised by their reaction.
So is it possible that in verse 14, rather than making, the application we would draw from that, there are repercussions, spiritual repercussions for sin, Jesus is simply telling you, don't break the law anymore so you don't have any more trouble with the Jews. And that's why he goes off and tries to reconcile himself with the Jews by saying, hey, this is the guy
That-
Jesus, because
yeah.
Jesus can take the brunt of it. And Jesus is simply saying, and he says that elsewhere, right? Don't break the law and follow the law.
Yeah. That definitely could be. I didn't think about that. But
In verse 10, when the Jews say it is the Sabbath, it is not lawful for you to carry the dead, I think we ought to at least ask the question, were they correct in their assessment?
mm-hmm.
I don't think Jesus violated God's law. I think he violated the rabbinic interpretations of God's law. God's law said don't work on the Sabbath. And that's about all that it says. It doesn't go into minute detail defining and describing just exactly what work is and what the parameters of work is. The Jewish rabbis got into all of that, and
Yeah.
they built a hedge around God's law. I think it started with good motives, but it got to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
In the Mishnah, you read about things like if a woman was sewing and she left the needle in the hem of the garment and she walks across the room, she was carrying a burden on the Sabbath, and that was
Yeah.
a violation of. I mean, I don't know if I'm remembering precisely, but it was that kind of thing. They just came up with ridiculous rules and regulations that God never prescribed in the old law.
Yeah.
I don't think Jesus violated God's law of the Sabbath. In addition to that, the Sabbath was a commemoration of Israel's deliverance from Egyptian bondage. I believe Jesus' healing miracles are intended to teach us about a greater healing, a greater deliverance, namely a deliverance from sin.
Yeah.
So what Jesus did on the Sabbath was perfectly in keeping with the intent of the Sabbath religion.
That's good point. 2 more questions. No. Bad.
I'm glad you haven't brought up the part about questioning, is carrying math violating the Sabbath. As we've gone from that, and I think there's definitely an irony here that a man who has been an invalid for 38 years, according to the account that John gives us, it's not, hey, what's going on? Congratulations, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Praise God. You don't get, instead you get, hey, you know, you're not. I mean, the first minutes and years of his freedom from this disability, he's being criticized for doing the wrong thing, according to their rules. into the place where the pilot's at and become unclean. So obviously, we're talking about, what do we call it, math, and whatever. They're really microscopic about their own heads that they feel that gives them authority, power, control over people. So very good for us to start with. Wait a second, is that even true? Is that even what the law talks about?
Yeah, good point.
It's interesting to me that they only get excited after Jesus has healed the man and then carries him halfway. What about those who would have carried him to the pool of Bethesda on the Sabbath day and there was healed? It just shows the complete inconsistency of the Pharisaic laws.
Yeah.
They had some real problems with
Yeah.
the way they applied things.
A lot of inconsistencies for sure. Greg, and then we'll move on.
Okay, I just had to do something I never thought I'd hear myself do before, so I'm gonna defend the Pharisees. So, I should focus it out because I've done. So, the Pharisees have a very clear law that says, remember Sabbath, keep it holy, and all that. You have to interpret that law. And so, when they're interpreting that law, at least from their perspective, from their point of view, they're trying to help this guy. They literally see this guy that they think is sinning. Are they doing a good thing by pointing it out? Yeah, once I moved you over to that side, now I'm gonna apply it to us. Do we do that? Do we take a law that's clearly a law, and then in our application, apply it too stringently or too stridently, I guess is what we might say that they would do. And then are we now limiting people's liberty in ways that we should not be limiting? It's an open-ended question.
Yeah.
I expect you to respond.
Interesting question. I don't have anything to respond. So, and then I'd like to move on to 19 through 29 here. This is, this is the most important part of the chapter, and I probably should have moved on sooner so we had a little bit more time to cover it. But if I could get somebody to read verses 19 through 24, and then somebody else to do 25 through 29. Yeah, and then you as well.
I'll start at 19.
Yes.
So Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. Whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he himself is doing. Greater works than these will he show, so that you may marvel. Whereas the Father raises the dead and gives them life, so also the Son gives life to whom he will. The Father judges no one, but has given all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my words and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but has passed from death to life.
Truly, truly, I say to you, an hour is coming, and is now here, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. For as the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son also to have life in himself. And he has given him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man. Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment.
Thank you. So these verses, they're focused on the nature of Christ's person and relationship with God. And this little bit is fundamental to other things that Jesus has said, and will say later in this gospel. His relationship to the Father, and then the truth behind Jesus' claims. These build the foundation for Jesus bringing the new birth, water of life, as well as his claims to be the living bread or the good shepherd. That was something Colin sent me. It was, I believe, a quotation or a paraphrase from something specifically. But since we're running out of time, if we'll move to the questions a little bit sooner. Do we see any connections from these verses to John 1 through 18? We've done that a couple times throughout this class, is go back and reference just the beginning of the gospel. Are there any connections between these two passages? Yeah.
The I and Father are one,
Mm-hmm.
and in the beginning was the Word was God, the Word was God.
Yeah.
Sort of implying this multifaceted
Yeah.
understanding of the
Yeah. Yeah, the unity is shown in both passages. Anything else?
Verse 4 of chapter 1 is the source of life.
Yeah.
Now he's talking about what this is going to look like here when he's on earth in person.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same life.
Yeah. And then they also show the belief in his name as well, the importance of that. And then how do these verses show the theme verse of this class? John 20:31, I believe, Jesus is Christ, Jesus is the Son of God, and all who believe in his name will have life. Probably shouldn't paraphrase that, but
And the greater works that they'll see, greater demonstrations that believe in,
mhm.
and also verse 24, believe in these things will live.
Yeah. Cody.
So like, he's just describing himself as the Son of Man. Poet brought to mind, scripture from Daniel 7.
Yeah.
Which like, agree. It's like a very, empowering and like, it's Jesus, comparing himself to this vision that is showing like how much power and authority and dominion, he has. And, it's like a super encouraging, like strong image of that given set of things that will apply to Jesus.
Yeah.
And, I just going back and reading again, so,
Mhm.
wasn't very good for me, but that's where Jesus is.
Yeah. Yeah, the prophecy in Daniel 7:13 through 14 specifically about the Son of Man. I mean, this ties in very closely with this, and it's about Jesus, obviously. But yeah, the main things from the theme verse in verses 19 and 20, those emphasize the unity between Jesus and the Father. And Jesus does the same works of the Father, he's not imitating them, but in the same nature, like he says in verse 17. And Jesus is like submitting to God. He only does the works of God, but he is also at the same time he's doing the works of God. So that shows that the authority of Jesus is the same as the authority of the Father. Verses 21 through 24, Jesus is the source of life and judgment by the will of the Father. God is the source of life. That's all throughout the Old Testament. The Jews would have been very familiar with this. But the same unity that he's talked about means that the Son is also the source of life. And then all judgment is given to the Son. And then in verses 25 through 29, the voice of the Son of God will raise the dead to life on the final resurrection. And there's some really important stuff that I wish we had time to get to about, I guess, the judgment, and then about the emphasis on belief versus emphasis on our actions and judgment based on that. But Colin will probably go over that a little bit on Sunday. And yeah, so Colin will be teaching this class on Sundays going forward. So thank you for your participation. Thank you.
I really appreciate you being here. We need to be praying for some people traveling. We have a few people who are sick. I think I was gone on Sunday sick, and now my wife Robin has it, so pray for her. But also, we have several people who didn't come out in the weather, so check on them. But for tonight, instead of we usually have a little talk, a little Bible study, but instead of doing that, because we have quite a few people away, we're going to go ahead and sing some songs. So we'll have an opening prayer, and then Kevin will lead us, and then Brent will lead us, and then Bill will lead us, and then Cody, and then Nathan will have the last song, and we'll have a closing prayer. Okay? We're going to do something a little different tonight, so hope you'll join in and sing along. Let's have our opening prayer.
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this time that we have to come together to study your word. We thank you for each and every one of the teachers that prepare the lessons and help us to learn more about you. Thank you also, Heavenly Father, for this another year that you've given us. We pray that as we lift up our voices and songs to you this evening, that it will be pleasing to your ears. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
667, please. 667. Know me so, and heavenly love abiding, no change my heart shall fear, and safe in such confiding, for nothing changes here. The storm may roar without me, my arm may low be laid, but God is round about me, and can I be dismayed? Wherever he may guide me, no one shall turn me back. My shepherd is beside me, and nothing can I lack. His wisdom ever waketh, his sight is never dim. He knows the way he taketh, and I will walk with him. Green pastures are before me, which yet I have not seen. Bright skies will soon be o'er me, where darkest clouds have been. My hope I cannot measure, my path to life is free. My Savior has my treasure, and he will walk with me.
Number 29, the rock of my heart. My Lord, I need nothing beside you. Without you, I could not have stood. Your promise is my hope and my refuge. Your nearness, my strength and my good. My heart may be broken within me, my earthly strength may depart. But you are my portion forever. You are the rock of my heart. You are the rock of my heart. When I was distressed and embittered by things I could not understand, your presence was continually with me. You always took hold of my hand. My heart may be broken within me, my earthly strength may depart. But you are my portion forever. You are the rock of my heart. You are the rock of my heart. I know that your counsel will guide me in wisdom, devotion, and love. And afterward you'll call me to glory, to dwell in your presence above. My heart may be broken within me, my earthly strength may depart. But you are my portion forever. You are the rock of my heart. You are the rock of my heart.
Number 378, Day by Day. Know me day by day, and with each passing moment, strength I find to meet my trials here. Trusting in my Father's wise bestowment, I've no cause for worry or for fear. He whose heart is kind beyond all measure gives unto each day what he deems best. Lovingly, it's part of pain and pleasure, mingling toil with peace and rest. Every day the Lord himself is near me, with a special mercy for each hour. All my cares he fain would bear and cheer me. He whose name is Counselor and Power, the protection of his child and treasure, is a charge that on himself he laid. As your days, your strength shall be in measure. This the pledge to me he hath made. Help me then in every tribulation, so to trust your promises, O Lord, that I lose not faith sweet consolation, offered me within your holy word. Help me, Lord, when toil and trouble meeting, ere to take as from a father's hand. One by one, the days, the moments fleeting, till I reach the promised land.
Number 236. Number 236, the power of the cross. Oh, to see the dawn of the darkest day, Christ on the road to Calvary, tried by sinful men, torn and beaten then, nailed to a cross of wood. This the power of the cross. Christ became sin for us, took the blame, bore the wrath we stand forgiven at the cross. Oh, to see the pain written on your face, bearing the awesome weight of sin. Every bitter thought, every evil deed, crowning your blood-stained brow. This the power of the cross. Christ became sin for us, took the blame, bore the wrath we stand forgiven at the cross. Now the daylight flees, now the ground beneath quakes as its maker bows his head. Curtains torn in two, dead are raised to life, finish the victory cry. This the power of the cross. Christ became sin for us, took the blame, bore the wrath we stand forgiven at the cross. Oh, to see my name written in the wounds, for through your suffering I am free. Death is crushed to death, life is mine to live, won through your selfless love. This the power of the cross. Son of God, slain for us. What a love!
Let's stand and sing number 768. And then we can remain standing for our closing prayer after that. 768. If for the prize we have striven, after our labors are o'er, rest to our souls will be given on the eternal shore. Home of the soul, beautiful home, there we shall rest, never to roam, free from all care, happy and bright. Jesus is there, he is the light, oft in the storm, lonely are we, sighing for home, longing for thee, beautiful home of the ransom beside the crystal sea. Yes, a sweet rest is remaining for the true children of God, where there will be no complaining, never a chasing rod. Home of the soul, beautiful home, there we shall rest, never to roam, free from all care, happy and bright. Jesus is there, he is the light, oft in the storm, lonely are we, sighing for home, longing for thee, beautiful home of the ransom beside the crystal sea. Soon the bright homeland adorning, we shall behold the glad dawn. Lean on the Lord till the morning, trust till the night is gone. Home of the soul, beautiful home, there we shall rest, never to roam, free from all care, happy and bright. Jesus is there, he is the light, oft in the storm, lonely are we, sighing for home, longing for thee, beautiful home of the ransom beside the crystal sea.
Let's go to God in word of prayer. Father in heaven, as we approach the end of another year, we look back on this past year and realize we've had so many wonderful blessings, so many physical blessings that we've experienced, each and every one of us in this room here tonight. We want to thank you for those. We also understand that we've all gone through some difficult things this year as well. And you've always been there. And you always will be. And we appreciate that. But even more wonderful than the physical blessings that we've experienced this year, we've also experienced so many spiritual blessings, like the opportunity that we had just this evening to look into your word and to sing songs that praise you and encourage one another. We thank you for that blessing, and we thank you for the opportunity that we have to do that from time to time. We've also seen wonderful spiritual growth within individuals within our group, and we're incredibly thankful for that as well. And most of all, we're thankful for your Son and his sacrifice so that we can have our sins forgiven and that we can be reunited with you and live with you forever. Please be with us as we leave this place. Help us to end this year well and to look forward to another year with you. This prayer we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.